moments late in life when you realize the life you lived and the life you imagined were never quite the same thing. My name is James Whitaker, and I am 90 years old. I have lived what most people would call a full life, but even now, I still find myself wondering who I might have been if I had listened to a quieter voice inside me. When I was young, life did not feel like something you shaped. It felt like something you stepped into. There were expectations, responsibilities, and a sense that the right path was already laid out in front of you. I did not question it much. I followed what seemed sensible, what seemed stable, what made the people around me feel at ease. I chose a profession that promised security. It was not something I had dreamed of as a boy, but it was respectable, and it gave me a clear direction. At the time, that felt enough. I told myself that dreams were uncertain things, and that a steady life was something to be grateful for. In those early years, I worked hard. I learned quickly. I built a reputation, and I became someone others could rely on. There is a certain satisfaction in that, in knowing that you are dependable, that your efforts have visible results. I carried that sense of purpose with me for a long time. But there were moments, small ones that did not quite fit into that structure. Moments when I would feel drawn to something else, something less defined. Sometimes it was a quiet interest, a curiosity about a different path, or a thought about what I might have done if I had allowed myself to choose differently. I remember once, when I was still in my 20s, being offered an opportunity that did not make much sense on paper. It was uncertain, less stable, and it required me to step away from everything I had started to build. I thought about it longer than I admitted to anyone. There was a part of me that felt alive at the idea of it, but in the end, I said no. I told myself it was the responsible decision. I told myself that stability mattered more than possibility, and once I made that choice, I did not look back, at least not openly. Years passed, and life unfolded in the way that life does. I married, I had children, and my days became filled with the steady rhythm of responsibility. There was always something that needed attention, something that required my presence. In many ways it was a good life. There was care, there was effort, and there were moments of quiet happiness that I did not always stop to recognize at the time. I became someone my family could depend on. I provided, I supported, and I made sure that things held together. That became my role, and I carried it seriously. There is a certain pride in that kind of life, even if it is not always spoken about. But every now and then something would surface, a thought, a memory, or a feeling that did not fully belong to the life I was living. It was never strong enough to change my direction, but it was always there, just beneath the surface. I would see someone doing something different, living a life that seemed less predictable, and I would feel a quiet curiosity, not regret exactly, but a question. What would it have been like to choose differently? What kind of person would I have become? I did not share those thoughts with anyone. They did not feel necessary, and perhaps I did not know how to explain them. Life was moving forward, and there was always another responsibility waiting. As I grew older, those questions did not disappear. They simply changed shape. They became less about specific choices and more about something deeper. Less about what I did and more about who I allowed myself to be. After I retired, the structure that had guided most of my life began to fade. There were fewer obligations, fewer demands on my time. At first I tried to replace that structure with small routines, small tasks that gave my days some shape. But slowly, I began to notice something I had not paid attention to before. Without the constant movement of responsibility, there was more space for reflection, more space for the thoughts I had set aside for so many years. I started to look back, not just at the big events, but at the choices I made along the way. The moments where I chose what was expected over what I felt. The times when I ignored a quiet instinct because it did not seem practical. And I began to understand something I had not fully seen before. My life was not shaped by one decision, but by many small ones. Each time I chose certainty over possibility, each time I stayed within what was known, I moved a little further away from something I never fully explored. I do not say this with regret, in the way people often think of it. I do not wish to undo my life. There is too much within it that matters to me. My family, the years we shared, the effort we put into building something stable and lasting. Those things are real, and they are valuable. But there is also another truth that exists alongside that. There is a version of myself that I never came to know. Sometimes I try to imagine him, not in detail but in feeling. Would he have been more at ease, or more uncertain? Would he have found something I missed, or simply faced different challenges? There is no way to know, and perhaps that is part of what makes the question stay with me. I have come to realize that a full life is not the same as a complete one. You can do many things, fulfill many roles, and still leave parts of yourself unexplored. It does not mean your life was wrong, but it does mean there were paths that remained untouched. In these later years, I find myself more comfortable sitting with that idea, not trying to resolve it, not trying to turn it into something neat or final, just allowing it to exist as part of my story. If there is something I would say to you, it is not to abandon responsibility or to chase every uncertain path. Life requires balance, and there is value in stability, but I would ask you to listen, at least sometimes, to that quieter voice within you, the one that does not always speak in clear terms, but that carries a sense of something true. Do not ignore it completely, the way I did, because one day you may find yourself where I am now, looking back on a life that was meaningful and full, and still wondering about the person you might have been if you had allowed yourself to follow that voice, even just once. And while that question may never have an answer, it will stay with you quietly, as long as you are here to ask it.